to another edition of the In the Game interview series. We've got Adrian Blewitt with us today. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us, Adrian. You'll hear me call him Bluey quite a bit as we talk. That's his nickname. So just my level of comfortability, I'll probably just keep calling you Bluey. Why don't you give us a little background of where you're at currently and some of the places that you've previously coached and kind of what brought you to the United States originally, and all that good stuff.
Okay. Well, currently the head women's soccer coach at Army West Point in New York. Came from Grimsby, England in 1990 to come over and play at Lock Haven University, a small D2 school in central Pennsylvania, and played there for 4 years. Stayed as the assistant coach and graduate assistant for 2 years. Headed down south in 1997 to become the head men's soccer coach at Methodist College for 5 years. After that, went to the mountains of North Carolina, up to Lees-McRae, small school, to become their men's coach. I was there for 3 years. School wasn't doing particularly well in that time with finances. My wife also worked there and had her job cut, so it was kind of time for us to start looking at elsewhere. So headed down the mountains down to Hickory, North Carolina, where I became the men's coach at Lenoir-Rhyne. And then after 2 years, the athletic director, Neil McGahey, came to me and asked me if I would consider coaching both programs, which I did for 2 years. And then after 2 years of just running around like a headless chicken, and having my daughter born in 2006, it was, it wasn't fair on the kids, I didn't think at that time. And kind of went back to the AD and said, look, I'm really enjoying coaching the women. I'd love to stay with the women, and can we make some changes? And we did. So I solely became the women's coach for a few years after that. Had a brief spell as the assistant coach at UNCG in 2012, and then got my first head coaching opportunity in Division I at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock for 5 years. So, did fairly well there, and then got the opportunity here 2 years ago to come to Army West Point as the head women's coach. So been, I think, 25, 26 years now in the college game.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of playing against some of your Lees-McRae teams, and then obviously getting to coach against you at Lenoir-Rhyne. And it was always interesting for my teams against your teams. I think one of the greatest goals I've ever seen scored against us was when we were playing against your Lees-McRae team that had Cano Smith on it my freshman year of college, and he took a ball off of his chest, probably 40 yards out on a diagonal away from goal, turned his shoulders, took it off his chest, and hit a volley in the far upper corner. And I turned around and looked at my coach and was like, what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah. No, Cano, I think over all the years and all the teams I've coached, I think, Cano is possibly the most talented player I've ever coached in 26 years of doing this. And he went on and had a pretty good career in the MLS as well. So I know he's down in Alabama coaching now.
Yeah, he was a heck of a player for sure. So what's the main thing that they got you into coaching?
I had some really good mentors growing up back home. I had a couple of really good youth coaches. Jeff Bartholomew was somebody who coached a lot of good talent in my local town growing up, and was a good mentor and a good role model for me. I think we became really close, and my family became really close with him, and he was kind of the one that kind of sent me on my track in my efforts to become a professional player, at my local team. So he got me kick-started really with just getting the enthusiasm for the game. So I've been really fortunate. I've had some very, very good people and good coaches that have provided me with some really good experiences. So, if I couldn't be a professional player, where I got close, but no cigar, then it was always about really getting into teaching and coaching for me, and to really, establish a career somehow in the game, and obviously try to do something that, could give me a pretty nice livelihood.
Very nice. So with working at a service school now, how different is the recruiting process for you, as opposed to like when you were at Lees McRae or Methodist or Little Rock or any of those other schools?
I actually think it's really similar. I really think, and I don't think I'm being biased by saying this, but I think somebody who's really spent a lot of time in the trenches recruiting for Division 2 schools and Division 3 schools, and even Little Rock, the best players in the country don't really look at going to Arkansas to go to school. So somebody who's had challenges like that of different kinds, I think is a person really well suited for the position here at the Service Academy. So the challenges are pretty much the same. The barriers are a little bit different, right? I mean, I get to, really sell that we are the #1 public school in the country. So I've never really been able to talk about that or sell that at any of the schools I've worked at before. Everybody gets a full scholarship to come here. So I've never really been in that situation before.
Yeah.
But obviously, getting kids to want to do the military thing is sometimes the hang up. So it's my job to really, point out the opportunities that can come along with a degree from West Point, and talk about the things that they really don't know. And I think most people have somewhat of a perception about what they think life is like in the Army or life is like at West Point, but it's usually not an accurate one until you're actually here, and you actually get to see what it's like to be a cadet here, or for anybody who has, spent some time in the Army as an officer. Not necessarily, a lot of people have parents and uncles and aunts and grandparents who spent time in the Army, and maybe it wasn't a great experience for them. I do think it's a little bit different as an officer, as a West Point graduate in the Army. So I think once we point out, some of the great opportunities that can come, to them with a degree from West Point, and with the challenges that our cadets get here on a daily basis, I think the 22-year-old that graduates from here is a much different 22-year-old than I've seen graduate from, regular schools that I've coached at before. It's a 22-year-old, I think, that is more resilient, and I think has been through a lot more challenges, especially as a female here at West Point. I think it's somebody who I think is ready to take on the challenges of life when they're older, whatever those challenges may be, whether they're personal challenges, whether they're work challenges, relationship challenges. But I do see a 22-year-old who's I think ready for maybe more of what might come along their way in life.
Yeah, I think I was lucky enough to be able to come up to work camp for you guys summer before last, and actually got to stay in the barracks there, even though I spent most of my time at your house or on the field. And West Point was very, very different from what I expected it to be, in a very positive way. Just the history of what the things that have taken place on those grounds was amazing, and it was something that I really, really enjoyed being able to at least come up and see. And we got to see some of the cadets kind of going through some of their stuff. So I thought that was an awesome experience that I've always really appreciated.
Yeah, I think it's different when people come and spend time here, and you can look at a million YouTube pictures and see people getting shouted at, and really get a false impression of what it's really like here. This place is full of people, yes, who are going to challenge you, but also full of people who really care for you and are going to guide you and are empathetic to the route that you've decided to take in life, and to serve your country and serve your nation. And it's not something that most people could do. But at the same time, the staff and faculty and coaches here are not sympathetic towards the cadets. We're here to guide them and help them and be empathetic, and I think there's a great difference with that. We're here to challenge them, and I think we see there's a great transition between the difficulties that we face as athletes here, and now it prepares you for the rigors of going into the Army. And I think that's what West Point and the Army in general wants to do with the athletic programs here. So it's a great challenge. From the recruiting side, though, I think I have the same challenges really that I've always kind of had at other places. I have probably a little bit more to brag about here as far as standards and academics and facilities and full scholarships. I mean, that's amazing to have, and really lucky and fortunate to have that. But at the same time, not everybody you speak to wants to serve their country.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I think the educational piece is a huge piece that you guys have going for you. Um, with obviously there's quite a bit of physical training that your student athletes have to go through as well. How do you guys have to, as a coaching staff, how do you have to balance your training with some of the things that they're having to do?
Yeah, there are certain tests that our cadets have to do as a priority to be able to graduate, and we have indoor obstacle tests, which are kind of like some of the old, videos that you may have seen in the olden times in old gyms, and doing old calisthenics and monkey bars and that kind of stuff, and they have to do the general Army tests like that, and an Army physical fitness test, which is about to be changed. It's going through the transition right now, but that was basically running 2 miles inside 20 minutes and doing as many push-ups in 2 minutes and as many sit-ups in 2 minutes as you can. That's now being transitioned over to what we call the Army Combat Fitness Test, which is a lot more carrying, dragging, a lot more movements that they think are relatable to being in the Army. So that was supposed to happen later this year, but I think it's been postponed for a while. But, generally the fitness tests that the Army require, athletes here in general really have no problem with them.
Yeah.
We're a lot more demanding, I think, with our kids to reach the level of being a Division I athlete than the demands of general physical fitness in the Army. I mean, we have 30 sports here at West Point, so there's an awful lot of athletes here, but we have 4,400 cadets here in total. So there's also a couple of thousand cadets here who are not on athletic teams. So there really is a wide variation in people's own standards of physical fitness, even though, there's certainly a minimum standard set by the Army. So our players don't have any issues with the standards of the fitness tests in the Army. The good thing that West Point does for our kids who are in season is they kind of move some of these tests to the off season. So they'd really do a good job of allowing us to really focus on our season. So the rigors of a Division I soccer season in the fall are not very different at all compared to any other school. And then once we're out of season, then we have to play, catch up a little bit, or have to do some more of the Army requirements in the off season.
Very nice. What style of play do you guys typically play with there at Army?
Well, I mean, it's so far in my first 2 years here, we've actually played quite direct, just because I kind of felt we have to. I mean, I think as a coach, I don't think you can have your own. Maybe you can have your own philosophy and what you think is the right way to play the game, but I think a good coach chooses a style to play the game according to the assets of the players that they have on the team. So we inherited a team here 2 years ago that was 8th out of 10th in the Patriot League, and wasn't full of great technical players or skillful players. But we did have what you would imagine you would have here at a school like this. We had really hardworking kids. We had intelligent kids. We had some athleticism, but it wasn't. We haven't had the kind of team the last 2 years where I think we could really build and play out of the back and play the beautiful game through the midfield and into feet and possess the ball and, get an attack and goal after completing 25, 30 passes. So we've had to kind of look at that and say, okay, how can this group play to their assets? So what we've done a really good job of, I think, is really, pressing our opponents really well, whether that's in the midfield third, whether that's a high press all the way up the field. So, being very organized defensively when we don't have the ball, and people usually laugh at me when I say we're actually better when we don't have the ball, but it really is true. We're very organized. We do a good job of forcing our opponents' play into pockets and pressing those pockets, and then looking to counterattack quickly with 1 pass, 2 pass, or 3 passes, where we can use our athleticism and we're not trying to do something that we're not particularly good at by building with 10, 15, 20 passes. So it's, I think it's easier to stop an opponent from playing rather than trying to be the team that's trying to play some really good soccer and beat you. So we've had some success being effective playing that way. Would I get 10 out of 10 for playing beautiful soccer with my team? No, but I don't care about that as much as winning. So it's my job, I think, to try and teach my kids to take opportunities that arise during games, right? I mean, if I love it when a team wants to try and play out the back. That plays into our hands, I think. So I love playing against coaches who have the Barcelona and Pep Guardiola philosophy of, hey, I want to play out the back and I want to play the beautiful game. To me, that's an invitation to push up and go press the heck out of them and try and win the ball a lot closer to their own goal. Would I love to have those kind of players that can play the beautiful game and win at the same time? Yeah, that would be great. I think most of us don't get talent-laden teams that can do that all of the time and win doing that. So I would much rather play an uglier brand and be successful and win rather than, try and play beautiful soccer and not win. But, we're bringing in, I think, more talent to the squad. I think this will be my first full recruiting class that we're going to add this year. And I do know that we'll be able to keep the ball better and build attacks better and play, I think, a nicer brand of soccer. But we're going to do whatever it takes to win and get the W's and try and, push for a conference championship.
Yeah, I think I had the chance to watch you guys play a few times through some online stuff last season, and I think I think I can completely see what you're saying as far as you have to be practical and you have to work with what you've got now, and obviously you've got a vision to where you want to try to build your team to, and you've just got to kind of recruit to that. But I really enjoyed the games that I watched you guys play. I think we try to play a very similar style with my Peace team because we're still kind of in that build. We're still very much in that building phase as well, where we're getting new better players, and we're developing the players that we already have to continue to try to play more. But we still have to play to our strengths, and I think that's very similar to what you were talking about.
Yeah, and I don't think we're not limited to.
Yeah.
I think the level of player and the type of player that we can get here, and I think a lot of coaches in the past or what people perceive as the kind of military kid that you can get here. I don't think that stereotype is true. I mean, we're really making it a cognizant effort as a staff to. We recruit the same as we've always recruited at any other school. We go looking for the best players that we can find. And then we talk to them about West Point. So we're really bringing in some very good soccer players, I think, and not just hardworking kids and athletes and intelligent kids, but we're really, recruiting a much higher level of player who has a higher level of soccer intelligence, I think. So I'm really excited and about really what we can bring here. And I really think that, we can take this program probably further than it's ever been in its history, to be honest. I'm excited about what we got going on.
Very nice. What's one of your favorite activities to do with your teams?
One, I don't know if there's one, Reed, but something that we do, which I think is really important, is the first 10 or 15 minutes of any practice, we will just let loose and we'll do something goofy. We'll have fun. We'll play, handball, or we'll play a variety of different tag games, rock, paper, scissors stuff. It's just, I think, a really good period to say, okay, we're done with the academics for the day. And now it's time to come here, have the most fun for the next 2 hours of your day. And let's just enjoy, kind of set the tone and set the mentality and set the environment that you really want to have for the rest of the session. So I think the first 10 minutes is really important, at the start of the session for that. And so we always make sure that we do that. If you want to talk X's and O's and on-field kind of coaching, I think the most important kind of activity and session that a coach can do in preparation and kind of preparing your team for a season is one on defensive shape and defensive roles. I enjoy doing that. It's not the most exciting for the players to do that because it involves a lot of standing, walking, jogging into areas of the field. identifying where you want to force your opponent's play, identifying when it's the time to step and press, and then looking to play out of that situation in transition. So for me, I look forward to that. The players do not look forward to that. I think it's the most, they're the most important sessions I think you can do as a coach to really help shut down other teams and to really identify the roles for each player defensively in those kind of situations. Other things that I think are really important to us here, when you say activities, is just having the kids over to the house. We do team dinners here. So we might do a team dinner once a month where a particular class will cook for the rest of the team. So, we'll go out, my wife will go and buy food. And that class, maybe it's a senior class who wants to do like a Mexican night or something, and my wife will go buy the food. And then, that class will come over to the house, an hour and a half before everybody else will start cooking the food in our kitchen. And then, we'll cook the dinner for the rest of the team. But it's, especially here as cadets, getting some home time, you really start to appreciate the simple things that we all take for granted, and being able to come over and just get a bit of fellowship together, play some minute to win it games together, lay on the couch with your laptop and just get out of the dorms. They become really, really big moments for our kids here. So I enjoy those moments, and I think those moments are as good as any training session that we may ever put together. I think other moments, and you say activities, this probably doesn't fit into the category you've asked me, but other moments I think are really important in the past. And I used to love sitting at an airport waiting for an international kid to arrive. That was really important to me. I love those moments, and you kind of knew that you were opening the door for a whole new life and situation if they wanted to take it and grasp it. So that's something else I just thought of when you said that, but that doesn't fit into what you asked me actually. So
yeah, not a problem. Yeah, I think you guys have a great setup there with you living on campus, and you have your own house there, and it's very accessible. I think that we're going to continue to start to kind of try to do some more of those things now that I live much closer to my campus. Now that I'm not driving an hour back and forth every day, thank God.
The school gives all head coaches houses here, and as you know, we're really fortunate with the house that they give us, but it's a house to use on your players and your cadets. I mean, that's the feeling behind it. And so we don't just sit here and feel good about ourselves for the situation that we're in. We make sure that we utilize this for the players and the cadets. It's so important for them that they have a place to come like this whenever they want to get away from the hustle and bustle of the middle of campus and in the dorm rooms, and just get a chance to relax and maybe take the uniforms off for a few minutes and just chill out and kind of feel like a normal kid again.
Yeah, very nice. What's one of your favorite coaching memories?
I don't have one. I mean, you do this for 26 years. You've got a few good ones and you've got some bad ones as well. I think of my men's team at Lenore Ryan in 2006. I mean, that was a really special season that we had together. We went 19-1-1 and finished 5th in the nation. And it was a good team. It was a really good group of kids. I mean, you sometimes hear coaches talk about it's the journey that matters and not necessarily winning and the final. And really, I think the journey that we all took that year was something that wasn't just a metaphor. I mean, it really was great seeing that group grow over the length of the season. I think my women's team at Lenore Ryan in 2010 was really, really good. We made it to the Elite Eight, and we had some really good times during that season as well. I think of little things like, I remember I had 5 tough years at Methodist, and my first 5 years as a head coach were really tough and really challenging at Methodist. And I look back and I wish I would have done many things differently. But I think when I went to Leeds McRae and we won the conference tournament, my first year here in the fall of 2002, that was really important for me. I mean, just psychologically, having had 5 rough years at Methodist and really lacking confidence and really looking at myself thinking, do I really want to do this anymore? Do I want to put myself through this psychologically anymore? And, you know, there were many times I went home at Methodist and looked at other jobs on the internet, not soccer jobs. I mean, being a UPS driver, I mean, something that was just totally different, that maybe didn't have, you know, those psychological lingering moments that flood you as a coach when things aren't going well, you know. So it was such a relief, I think, when we won the conference tournament in 2002 at Leeds McRae, that I actually kind of felt, okay, I can do this. So that was good for me personally. But I've been so fortunate in the kids I've coached, and I'm the sort of coach where I don't tell them very often while we're going through the journey together. And I've, you know, I wish as I've gotten older that you know, I could have coached these kids with the head of a middle-aged man, rather than that control freak as a 20 and 30 something coach who wasn't always the most personal, kind of separated job and personal feelings sometimes with players. And I wish I could go back and coach a lot of those kids again, you know, but you grow with age, you learn with age. We've all made lots of mistakes and done some dopey, stupid things, you know, while we were younger, and things that we regret. But I've been so lucky in the kids I've coached over 26 years. And you don't always realize that at the time you're going through the battles. And then when you get older, you do realize it, you know?
Yeah, I think there's definitely many things that, and I'm obviously a younger head coach. You know, I've only been a head coach in the college game for 6 years now, but I've been in it for, I mean, 15 in the coaching side of it. So, you know, I think there's tons that especially when I was younger, and even my first couple of years as a head coach, that I look back now, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I said
Yeah.
that. I can't believe I did that. You know, so I think it goes back to something that we've talked about with some of our other coaches that we've had on, is that self-reflection of, you know, you have to go back and look at what you did well and what you definitely need to improve upon, for sure. So
Yeah, I often think of probably what I would look at as probably the toughest time in my coaching career, my first 5 years at Methodist. And it was a horrible situation for a young 25-year-old head coach to be thrown into, you know. And I mean, I went to counseling with players, I went to rehab with players, you know, I did all sorts of stuff. And then I look at some of the ways I spoke to players and treated players, which was just wrong, and it was poor. But my goodness, I'm a much better coach now as a middle-aged man for those experiences that I had during that time. And I think some of those players would probably look back and think, man, I was a bit of an idiot, and I shouldn't have done that, and I shouldn't have done this, and I should have done this better. And we all do as we get older, and we all reflect. And I'm definitely at that time in my coaching career where you really do reflect on the early years. And it's really eye-opening. And I think it's that stuff that makes you a better coach as you kind of move on, and you use those experiences when you're younger, good or bad, to really change how you do and how you see things when you get to middle age.
for sure. I'm a little bit behind you, but I'm getting there.
Okay.
So, what do you feel is one of the most important pieces of being a coach?
I think, you know, when I think of the coach I wish I could be, and I strive to be, it's that balance, I think, between being the person that challenges and is demanding of the players to really help them get better, to help a group of players get better and be the best that they can be. But at the same time, the players know you've got their back, that they know that you deeply care. And I've not been great at that, to be honest. You know, I've had some really successful teams, but I don't think I've always shown the players just how much I do care for them at times. And I think that's a personal challenge that I've had in the separation of really doing my job and maybe not trying to get too attached to some players, which once again, I regret a little bit now when I'm older. I love the challenge of bringing players together from different backgrounds, who have different values, from different economic backgrounds, from different parts of the country and different parts of the world, and trying to put them together to play the one common thing that they've always done, which is the game, and then trying to organize them into being a successful group of people. So that to me is amazing, and something that I truly love to do. And it's each year you get to do that, because you're obviously bringing in new groups of players each year. I certainly don't get the chance to bring in internationals while I'm here at West Point anymore. But it's still neat to bring in people from different economic backgrounds and different corners of the country to come together and deal with the challenges that they have for you day to day at West Point. So I really enjoy that, to try and pursue a common goal.
Good. Having coached on both, on the men's and the women's side of the game, did you treat your players differently between the two?
Yeah. I think you have to. I mean, if I look back, my first year of coaching women was at Lenore Rhine in 2007, and I got lots of advice from lots of different people on how you should coach females. Having coached men for 12 or 13 years by that time, and people told me, don't treat them any differently, treat them the same. They don't want to be treated any differently than the men. So I went into that season and treated them just the same. But I also conveyed the information the same that I would do it to men. And I think that was a major mistake. So sometimes when you get frustrated, sometimes when you flip out, which I used to do back then, women just shut off. Women don't respect, I think, a person that would act that way and speak that way. Sometimes men are a little bit more tolerant with that kind of stuff. So it really has made me a better coach when I started to really coach females. And I think I reflected again on that 2007 season and thought, wow, I just did a terrible job of coaching females my first year. So it really made me self-reflect. It made me think more before I spoke. It made me think about how I want to convey and translate information, the same soccer information, maybe X's and O's, but convey it in a way where I think it would be more receptive from females, by females. And I think each year coaching females, I've done a much better job, I think, of conveying information. I think at the end of the day, if females don't like you, they probably won't play as hard for you. I think if they like you, and certainly if they respect you as a person, I think they will, follow you a little bit more. I think follow your plan a little bit more. There'll be more buy-in. So I've learned that over the years. So it's been great for my coaching career. I mean, it really has changed, I think, how I coach now compared to how I used to coach. And it just makes me think a lot more. I have to be a much more intelligent coach than I used to be. Mm-hmm. So I think it's been good for me, good for my career. I'm still the honest, sometimes blunt coach, which I think I always will be. I don't think you can take that out of me. And I think when players, if you ever asked a player who played for me, what's he like? I think the first word would say is honest, which I think for me growing up in England, I think being honest is, whether it's good or bad, is one of the biggest values that we are taught. But I don't think that always translates as well in this country. So sometimes when we're honest, it's taken very negatively when we don't want it to be taken negatively. So there you go.
Yeah, I think you have to be upfront with your players, and if you're not that all the time, then they have trouble trusting that when you really are trying to be that's the truth. I think that honesty goes a long way for sure. I think it's got to be there. If it's not, then you're probably in this profession for the wrong reasons.
Right. Your players have to know, number one, that you care, and number two, that you're invested in them. And then I think once they know that, respect, I think, is there. And then when honesty does happen and does come along, and they think it's, whoa, that's a little harsh, or that's a little sharp, they know that I care, and that maybe I'm doing it for the right reasons. So yeah, they've got to see that you are totally invested in them, invested personally, and then then you can pursue whatever the common goals are for the group. But first and foremost, they want to know that you're invested in them and that you care for them and that you've got their back and you're on their side. And my goal is about their development and as a person, not just as a player, but as a person, even more so here at West Point. There are many times here at the academy where, I'm probably a soccer coach, honestly, for probably 10 or 15% of a day. I'm there if they need me. I'm a dad sometimes. I'm an uncle sometimes. Sometimes I'm a guidance counselor. Sometimes I feel like I'm a lawyer. But there's all those hats that we wear as coaches, right? And very rarely, sometimes do you honestly think that you're a soccer coach, and that's one of the things when I look back, when I started coaching 26, 27 years ago, I look back at how the profession has changed. And, I kind of think sometimes, wow, I just signed on to be a soccer coach. I love the game. I love playing the game. I love coaching the game. And now it's like, gosh, now I have to be a life coach. And maybe I'm not very good at that, but now as you coach the people, and I think you coach a different generation now compared to when I first started, you have to change with the times as a coach. And, it's transitional for us as well. I was somebody who just loved the game. So, we get older, yet we coach the same age kids, every season, every year. So we have to change.
Yeah. And I think that some of those other pieces that we as college coaches have to do, that's kind of crept into the club game as well. With the ability to contact so easily. I think back to when I was a kid, I saw my club coach for 2 hours at a time. And now, could be 12 o'clock. I coach a U17 boys team right now as well. Could be 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm in the office with my college team doing something, and I'll get a text from one of my high school kids saying, hey, what do you think about this? Whether it's, they're starting their college search process. So they'll ask me about schools and coaches and programs. And sometimes it's just, like I've already started being a reference for high school kids trying to get jobs. So, I think that's something I never would have asked my club coach to do whenever I was playing. It was a very different contact level than it is now, for sure.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for young coaches?
Well, I've already talked about a few things there as I've kind of looked back at maybe some of my early mistakes, and kind of the coach that I am now. But I know as a young coach, I kind of felt I had to control everything. I felt I had to control all aspects of my program. And I think as you get older now, you really learn to kind of not sweat the small stuff, and kind of pick and choose your battles better. You just learn to let some things go that maybe in the past you would have jumped all over, whether it's something with a player or something with the administration that you maybe got pissed off about. It's almost like you've kind of gone through that stuff and you've gathered all this information over the years and you've filtered it, and then you start to realize what is more important and what's not important. So I would say that to a younger coach, that you can't correct everything, you can't control everything, but really focus on those things that you feel are most important, and be willing to kind of let go on some of those things that might kind of irk you sometimes, but is it for the greater good, just to kind of let things bypass a little bit and blow over. So in the short, I think that's advice I would give to a younger coach.
Very nice. Yeah, I think you have to pick your battles. If you try to fight every battle, you're just going to burn yourself out, and you're probably going to piss off a lot of people too.
Yeah, I mean, you think of the situations, especially in Division 2 and Division 3, that we come up against as coaches. I mean, I think about this stuff and I look back at this stuff, and I think I coached 6 programs in 26 years as the head coach, and I think 5 of those were in really bad situations when I got there, bottom of the conference, near the bottom of the conference. I think it was only Leeds McRae, maybe, that when I got there, it was already a pretty decent team, decent program. But you think of the situation that you you get into as a coach at those levels straight away. I mean, you've basically got a window of maybe 3, 4, 5 years, whatever an AD wants to give you, to show that you can at least show progression and turnaround of the program. It may not be in championships, but it may be just in better records. It may be in, devising a much better culture that the kids want to be a part of. But there's pressure there. I mean, I think as coaches, we feel that pressure that we want to be able to provide for our family. We'd like to have stabilization for our families. But then again, look at the resources that we sometimes get thrown out too in Division 2 and Division 3, especially even at Little Rock. For me in Division 1, I mean, the budget I got at Little Rock was the same as I had at Lenore Ryan, a D2 program, so, but then they expect us to fly at Little Rock. We had a massive conference and they wanted us to, sometimes to drive 10 and 12 hours or to go fly, and we had no budget to do that. So you have to go fundraise. You inherit a team that hasn't been very successful. So philosophically, what do you do? Obviously, you need to try to make the current group that you inherit as successful as you can and try and develop them as much as you can, but at the same time, get out there recruiting and try and bring in stronger players. But then you've got limited budgets, you've got limited finances, you've probably got limited scholarship money. So then you get into those ethical kind of situations where that if you're going to turn around this program more quickly, that maybe you can't bear with some of the average players that you inherited that might be on a lot of scholarship money, because that's going to slow down the turnaround and the progress of you turning your program around, which in effect could lead to you losing your job in 3 or 4 years. So I think it's really important to highlight that a lot of coaches get into those situations, and it puts you into situations that you don't like being in. They're the most awkward situations where you've had to, once again, I've got lots of friends that just philosophically will never cut anybody's scholarship money, and for me, it was different because I felt I had to turn around teams as quickly as possible to help the situation of the program, to help me and my family feel a little bit more like, hey, okay, we might have a chance to be here a bit longer if we can turn it around more quickly. And they were some of the most compromising situations as a coach that, you'd lose a lot of sleep in having to think about those things when it's a kid who you really like, who isn't a great player and may have to sacrifice in order to bring in somebody else and free up that money to build your program. So we get put in some really awkward situations as coaches, as young coaches, when we're in programs that are sometimes struggling, at schools that are sometimes struggling. And I think we're going to see that again now with the sign of the times here with the virus and the pandemic. There's going to be a lot of financial issues and problems with schools. And none of us are experts in those situations. We're just soccer coaches who get put in those situations.
Yeah, I think one of the refreshing things for me with going from Division 2 to Division 3, with us not having scholarship money, it's really philosophically, I think it's a better fit for me right now, because I know that if a kid is coming to come play for me at Peace, it's not for the money. It's because that's where they think they fit best. And we tell all of our recruits when we're going through the process, we're like, yeah, this is where it's going to be financially. If it's too much, even if this is the best place for you, don't be here. Because that's something that weighed on me pretty heavily at the D2 level with trying to match the scholarship levels with the level of the player and what the families needed. And obviously everybody wants a full ride, but that's just not going to happen, except for on your team, obviously. Yeah. So I think that's something that's really taken some of the pressure off of me as far as that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I mean, thank goodness I don't have to worry about scholarship money anymore. And we've got players on our team who are great kids, and the first couple of years here, I added some walk-ons, and now we're bringing in some really strong players, that they're probably not going to play very much, if at all, for us, but I don't have to cut them to free up scholarship money. They're great kids, and I flat out told them that I will not cut them because I think they bring value to our program. And if they feel they get to that stage where the reward just isn't worth it anymore for the time that they're investing with training and still doing the right things, then then obviously they can leave on their own back. But it's so nice not to be in that situation anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Louis, we really, really appreciate you taking some time to talk with us today. Um, Obviously, it's a crazy time, and everybody's trying to kind of figure out some things and how to continue to be successful in the profession. And I think you've got some great information that you've shared with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you doing this. It's good for us just to get together and share ideas and chat and connect, and just everybody stay healthy out there, stay safe, and we'll be ready to move on as soon as we can.
Sounds good. Thanks, Blue.
All right, take care.